And our next speaker is a community leader, is a member of the Carroll County, Maryland community, and the chair of the Carroll County chapter of Moms for Liberty, Kit Hart.
Thank you. Good evening. It is so amazing and empowering to be around so many other fellow patriots tonight, gathered around an issue that is so fundamental that it predates our Constitution, the issue of parental rights. Thank you so much to Tim for putting this together. I know it was a tireless effort that you worked for many years on, so thank you to you and your team. As Darren mentioned, my name is Kit Hart. I'm with Moms for Liberty. Our movement began in 2021 when unelected bureaucrats decided that the comfort of adults was more important than the needs of our children. Moms across the country were given a glance behind the education curtain only to discover that instead of sending their kids to school to learn and be educated and be challenged, they were going sent into those schools to be heavily indoctrinated into a leftist radical worldview. But the thing is that this indoctrination didn't just begin in 2020. It's been a decades-long process that began when compulsory education was mandated, which required parents to send their kids away from home to be educated. So actually, prior to the 18th century, virtually everybody was educated at home. And guess what the literacy rate was during that time? It was 95%. But everything changed when, of course, the government intervened and education was institutionalized. The pioneer of public education himself, John Dewey, envisioned a public education system that resembled that of the Soviet Union, in fact. And he believed that it was the goal not so much of kids to necessarily gain knowledge and wisdom and understanding that was needed for individual flourishment, but more that they needed to be socialized to benefit the collective. So now, decades later, students have been transformed into change agents. Instead of teaching that 2 + 2 = 4, they're being asked, how do you feel about 2 + 2 = 4? In social emotional learning programs, and I hope everybody remembers that word, social emotional learning, that they're weaved throughout the entire curricula of every subject. Students are being taught that feelings should be prioritized over facts. And it's created generations of citizens who are uneducated and thereby very easily manipulated. Can you believe that just last year, there were 23 schools in the city of Baltimore that had 0 students who were proficient in math? Throughout the state, and I know Darren mentioned this, but just the state as a whole, only 33% of Maryland 8th grade students were proficient in reading, and 25% passed the state math exam. However, this is the curious part, the graduation rate, anybody want to guess? 87%. And that's because 87% of kids were learning what the government wanted them to know. And you know what? We, the parents, we've had enough. We just want our schools to do the one thing that they are intended to do, and that is to teach our kids. Our government employees and unelected bureaucrats are not invited to our dinner table to discuss our religion or to our bedrooms to deliberate our beliefs on sex. They simply have opposing doctrines than we do, and their unwritten catechism is dichotomous to ours. Moms for Liberty is based on the belief that parents have the fundamental right to direct the education and upbringing of our children, and we do not co-parent with the government. Thank you. Once parents lose these fundamental rights, this sweet land of liberty will cease to exist. You know, every thriving society recognizes 2 unique distinctions. They work to uphold these 2 unique distinctions: the distinction between a man and a woman, and the distinction between a child and an adult. The trans cult, and yes, it's a cult, along with every other government, every other powerful institution, are working hand in hand to blur those distinctions. We see this in the demonization of masculinity, the erasure of women's private spaces, and the destruction of childhood innocence. In order to protect our children, we need to view every cultural issue as a matter of child protection. We're either going to protect children or victimize them. But I know which path all of us here will be choosing. The lions have been awakened, and we will not go back to sleep. Until our children are offered soccer over screens, geography over gender studies, and Dr. Seuss over sexuality education, we will fight for the right to protect and properly educate our children. Our rights as parents were given to us by God, and they cannot be taken away. I invite you to join us to preserve parental rights and childhood innocence in a culture that treats adults as children and children as adults. It's an uphill battle for sure, but it is our duty to climb it. And each of us here was born for such a time as this. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kit.